countdown. I figure we'll kick it old school. I've changed the background here to the Superdome in the late '70s. You could see all the pavement they've got around there. The seats actually are much closer, and they don't even have this bottom row anymore. That was the
Can
old.
you imagine getting slid out of bounds and not being able to stop before the grass stops?
A lot of guys did. A lot of guys did back then. Well, they had the TV truck that would run on this side over here, and it still does, but everything's much more compact now. But yeah, these seats were like stackable chairs they had. And if you watch, because they just had the Super Bowl, they just finished, what was it, last week, all the Super Bowl highlights. So if you look at the 1977, Super Bowl 12 with the Broncos and the Cowboys, you can see the fans that are sitting in those seats, those stackable chairs back then. So that's gone. The Superdome's been redesigned several times since then. But yeah. All right. So Sean, Bob, and I'm Alan. Welcome to another episode of the off-season edition of Under the Dome. I see you, Jerry. I see you, Donald. Today is 2/22 of the year 2022, and it's the second day of the week. If you count Monday as the first day, it's the second day of the week. So you've got 2/2/2/2/2, and
Tuesday.
Yes, and at 2/22. People like just posting shit all over social media, like, "Oh, today is so great!" And of course, somebody actually went back in time to 1922, and they said, "Okay, it was a Thursday in 1922, so this is really a special day."
It won't happen again for 400 years. They said that on the news this evening.
400 years. Okay.
I can't imagine the idiot sitting there going through calendars going, no. Oh, here we go.
Yeah, no, thank you. So, and Chad says today is his dad's birthday. Is he 20? Is he 22 though? Can you imagine your birthday's 2/22/22, and you turn 22? I mean, we could just stretch this out
on a Tuesday.
On a Tuesday, we could just stretch this out forever. What's the thing? Your golden birthday is supposed to be you that turn the age of the day or the date of your birthday. Like if you were born on the 10th, your golden birthday is supposed to be when you turn 10 on the 10th. I guess. I don't know.
I am so far removed from that. Mine's the 8th.
Yeah, my kids told me that story. I guarantee my 16th birthday was not that spectacular. 17th one was a hell of a lot better than my 16th one.
It also explains why my life has been downhill since I turned 4.
Yeah. I mean, my daughter.
People always told me that the way that you realize that you're getting old, when you start to accept that you're getting old, is when you can remember your parents being the age that you are.
Yeah.
I did that math the other day, and that was scary. I did the math of how old my grandfather was when I was born, and I did the math of how old my parents were when my son was born. And I am past both those ages already.
Wow.
And I'm not a grandfather by any stretch of imagination.
That you know of.
No, I know this. I may have an illegitimate brother somewhere, but I do not have a grandchild I'm not aware of. But yeah, my grandfather was 47 when I was born. And it's one of those things, and people talk about this all the time. If you look at your pictures in yearbooks or just look at old photos, it's like people looked older back then. And granted, people smoked and people, drank and ate poorly and all that stuff, but they just looked older. There you go, Bob.
No, and they lived longer too.
Well, yeah, some did, some didn't. I mean, my grandfather died. He was 78, but my grandmother, my dad's mom, lived till she was 95, 96. I don't remember. 2011. She was 4 years. Yeah, 96. She just turned 96.
My great grandmother passed away in 1995. Depending on who you ask, she was either 100 or 101.
Oh, yeah. I'm just thinking about when I was a kid, the two old ladies that lived across the street. And I say old ladies because, and they were only in their 40s, but it's like her hairstyle, their hairstyle stopped when they turned, like it was 1955 forever. That the hairstyle for the 1950s, and that was the hairstyle they're going to wear. Hey, Deb. My wife, somebody's knocking at the front door. Hang on. I got to text this real quick. Anyway, the thing I was going to bring up, speaking of all the dates and stuff like that. So today was 2/22. Bob, you did an article on this, and the article is that what was it? Famous Saints players who wore the number 22.
Mm-hmm. And number 2. I did number 2 as well, but it was a much shorter list.
There's not a whole lot of number 2s. There are not a whole lot of number 2s.
The only two that come to mind for me were the two quarterbacks.
And those were the only two significant ones. 6 players have worn a number 2 in Saints history. And if that wasn't odd enough, nobody wore it until 1995. And that was Chip Lohmiller, kicker. Then Alindo Mari, John Casey, and Zach Hawker, all kickers, wore it. And then you got your two quarterbacks. So certainly, like Alan said, certainly not a distinguished list. Other than Aaron Brooks, and we shall see. Maybe we shall see what Jameis Winston is going to do. But none of the John Casey had a really nice year in 2011.
Yeah, I was going to say.
The other 3 kickers didn't even stay with the Saints the entire year.
Right, John Casey, they called him out of a parent-teacher conference.
Yeah,
because he was retired. And it's weird, you go back and watch the old Saints highlights on YouTube and stuff like that. John Casey is kicking when the Carolina Panthers are an expansion team. Mm-hmm. He's kicking for the Panthers. That's 95. And then you see him kicking in 2011 for Sean Payton and the Saints. It's like John Carney beat the Saints in San Diego in 1991. Yep. And here he is kicking for the Saints in 2009, their Super Bowl year. I mean, it's just, granted, it's kickers. And I think the funny thing, Chip Lohmiller was the first player to find out that 8 is unavailable.
Yeah.
Because he got there, because that was the whole Morton Anderson debacle. And now the Saints are looking for a kicker. And we all thought that, okay, it's going to be Norm Johnson. We're just swapping kickers. Atlanta's taking Anderson, so we're just going to get Norm Johnson. No, we don't get Norm Johnson. We get Chip Lohmiller, who sucked. He was good with the Redskins, but he was terrible for the Saints. And he asked for number 8, and Silky Powell, who was the trainer back then, he used to hand out the jerseys, said, sorry, man, that jersey's just not available. And Archie is the only player who's ever worn number 8 in the entire 55 years of the Saints, or 56 now. Yeah, he's the only player who ever wore number 8. And it's one of the rare numbers that no other player has ever worn. 0 and 00, obviously. And 2 for
Even
a long
two players have worn 0 and 00 though.
Well, 0 and 00, only one player has worn each of those numbers. Both of them. Well, 0 was on the expansion Saints. But 00 was Ken Burrow, who the Saints drafted in the first round in 1970. And Archie Manning gets drafted in 71. He's like, oh, great. I'm going to get to throw to Danny Abramowitz, who is 2 years removed from a Pro Bowl, and first-round pick Ken Burrow. If we can just get some skill players together, I might, offensive line and some running backs, I might be able to do something. No, we're going to trade Burrow to the Houston Oilers in 71 because he's one of Tom Fears' guys, and I don't like him. It's J.D. Roberts. I don't like him. And then we'll get rid of Abramowitz in 2 years. Yeah, good luck, Arch. It's just that's the way it goes. So, I
want to ask a question before we dive into this.
Okay.
Obviously, I was not able to be here last week to hear y'all's reaction to the Super Bowl. So let's hear it.
Okay.
I know you're probably going to say I told you so.
Bob, you want to go first, or?
Yeah, I can nutshell it. Sean, I thought it was a good game. It was entertaining to watch. I found myself rooting for the Bengals, and I found myself extremely pissed off at both coaches at the end of the game because I have never seen worse offensive play calling in crucial situations than I did on the Cincinnati side. And I did, admittedly, I reveled in the fact that that Eli Apple and the play calling cost the Bengals a championship. And if Cincinnati doesn't use every single offseason move they have available on the offensive line, then someone in that organization, Joe Burrow should sue them, bring them up on civil charges of assault.
I agree with that. It was one of those Super Bowls. I had no rooting interest. I wasn't a Bengals fan. I'm not an LSU fan. And the Rams, I don't like McVay. I don't like the idea of a super team. I found it amusing that, here the Rams, this is a home game essentially, and it still looks like a regular season game where you got more fans from the other team than you do have Rams fans there. And the parade just totally iced it for me.
Yeah.
When, I've seen more people on Saturday, 2 weekends before Mardi Gras, watching an all-women's crew that usually contain blue-hair, Bloody Mary gang old ladies, who just throw one bead at a time. There was one parade, my brother's going to remember this. There was one parade called Rhea, and my brother and I used to call it diarrhea because it was such a shitty parade. But more people would show up for that parade than showed up for the Rams parade, so that was embarrassing.
I had mixed feelings on the game, obviously. I was supporting the Bengals.
Well, sure.
I found it quite distasteful and don't misunderstand what I'm about to say here, because by no means am I saying the referees gave that game to the Rams. Aaron Donald showed up when he needed to show up. But it made me absolutely sick to my stomach that they let those teams play until the Rams had the opportunity to win the game. And then they start calling ticky-tack stuff. I found that very distasteful in that big of a game. If you're going to let them play, let them play. If you're going to call it close, but don't change ships in the middle of the race.
Well, especially when you miss the face mask call they gave the Bengals their touchdown, that was obvious. And then at the end of the game, now you're going to start calling it tight because you want to give the Rams all the opportunity in the world because a field goal would have made it, 19-20, I think?
Yeah.
If they kick a field goal? Yeah. and you give them more opportunities to win. And yeah, I got a kick out of the fact that Eli Apple was the one that caused them to lose the game. I was hoping that, and Cooper Cup was the one that caught the touchdown passes. But it was one of those games where, like I said, I really didn't have an interest either way. There wasn't. I don't like the Rams, so don't get me wrong. I don't like the Rams. I don't like Sean McVay. I don't like the idea of building that super team and stuff. But it was not like in 2018 where I really hated the Rams because I didn't think they belonged there.
I couldn't support the Rams if they were the only team in it, just on principle.
Yeah.
And that's fair. And I'm like Alan. I hate McVay. I've always hated the Rams front office and the way they do things. I was happy for Jim Everett, because he's a strong LA supporter.
Mm-hmm.
I was happy to see Aaron Donald, Cooper Kupp, and Matt Stafford get rings. But I hate Odell Beckham. I hate Jalen Ramsey. But I can't say Von Miller jumped ship from the Denver Broncos, but I mean he's a Bronco, through and through.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't like seeing him get another ring with a different team. But I'm not, like you guys said, I'm not going to lose sleep over it either, because this wasn't the 2018 Rams. I did pick them to win it all at the beginning of the year. I picked them to beat an Ohio team. I just had the wrong Ohio team. That's all.
Well, and the other thing too is the NFC. There was no team I was like really for to come out of the NFC. I mean, it was like just I didn't want Dallas to. Well, go ahead.
No, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Well, I was just saying I didn't want Dallas to go.
No,
and I really didn't want the Rams to go, and I didn't want Packers maybe, just because I think Aaron Rodgers. Well, here's the thing. I think it'd have been hilarious to watch Aaron Rodgers stand up there with Roger Goodell, and Roger Goodell having hand in the trophy. Just because here's a here we go. Here's a guy, but Aaron Rodgers up there with the whole COVID thing and the whole bashing organization, and guess what? I just won you a Super Bowl, and I'm the league MVP and everything else, and I'm out of here. Bye, y'all. That would have been entertaining for me. But again, I wasn't like the Packers got to go. It was just all those teams. I was glad Brady didn't go again.
Yeah.
So it was like, do I want the 49ers to go? If I wanted them to go over the Rams, if I wanted anybody, just because I wanted the Rams to fail. But
well, you can thank Jaquiski Tart for that.
And Garoppolo. See, the 49ers are constructed like the kind of team I like to watch play if they weren't the 49ers. And that's the same reason why I can never root for the Rams to win is the 49. For any Saints fan our age, we will never, ever, ever be able to root for the 49ers, the Rams, or the Falcons. It's just it's impossible. It's not in our DNA.
I did enjoy Brady losing to the Rams, and the way the Bucs lost to the Rams. I thought that was hilarious. I mean, the best receiver they got, they let run down right down the middle of the field and score. That was great. That was perfect for me.
In my opinion, just looking at the overall scope of it this season, the level of play in the NFC was way, way down. And the level of play in the AFC shot through the roof.
It actually did. As far as more teams that there was no elite team this year, not even close.
No.
But I think there were more complete teams in the AFC. I could have the Bengals, the Chiefs, the Bills, and to a lesser extent the Titans. They were all sort of interchangeable. You could have seen any of them legitimately being in the Super Bowl. Meanwhile, in the NFC, you were waiting to see if a team like the 49ers or the Cardinals would be able to overcome, Goodell's favorite, Goodell's favorites, Rodgers, Brady, his LA darlings, things like that.
And the Super Bowl did not trump the AFC divisional round between the Chiefs and the Bills.
Yeah.
That was by far the most entertaining postseason game of all the games.
I agree with that.
That last 3 minutes or 2 minutes and some change was just unbelievable. The very fact that Mahomes could go down in 13 seconds with 2 plays and get a field goal, it's just that was.
The fact that the number 1 defense in the league, allowed that. That was. Who do you blame? I mean, do you blame their defense, or do you just give Mahomes the credit for being able to do it? I mean,
I think the defense was gassed.
Absolutely. One. That last 2 minutes was brutal for both defenses.
Yes, and I also think that they didn't know how to stop Mahomes at that point of the game. Do you blitz him and risk, Hill and Kelsey running free, or do you keep them all in front of you and try and limit the yards after the catch and keep them in bounds? But they had all 3 timeouts. Mm-hmm. I mean, it was just you in no man's land, and they only needed a field goal to tie. It wasn't like you had to protect the whole field. So you were kind of in no man's land on how you were going to defend this. So, yeah, it was I felt for them. It was one of those games where you almost wish, and I felt, Josh Allen was just staring out into space the whole time. Every time the camera went to him, he's just staring out into space. But, yeah, he
Let's
just –
Josh Allen does that anyway.
Yeah, I know. I just, that was one of those games where you wanted to keep going. I wanted a whole nother quarter. Because I'm sure if they would have played a whole quarter, there would have been about 3 or 4 more lead changes in overtime.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So, and unfortunately, the best team that did not make the playoffs in the AFC was the Los Angeles Chargers. I would have loved to have seen what the Chargers would have done in the playoffs. Of course, Josh,
I think that the Chargers are still a couple of pieces away from being able to transcend to that next level. I really do.
They got to get rid of Jared Cook.
And
Jared Cook actually catches the ball for them
because it wasn't the playoffs.
He did for New Orleans for a while too. The second year of Jared Cook, wherever he has been, is when he becomes Jared Cook.
Yeah,
and that's exactly the way it worked out for New Orleans too. Cook is once again going to be an unrestricted free agent. Someone is going to overpay
that
for him.
I agree with
for a year.
I agree with right there, Calvin.
Calvin, I see. Yeah, and I was just about to say one of those pieces that the Chargers need is a sports psychologist, because they are a perennially stupid team, and you can reach back 3 decades, to point 4 decades really to point out why.
Yeah. I mean, even the Super Bowl team, which I was really pulling hard for the Chargers to beat Steve Young and the 49ers, because that was a super team, and it bugged me. And Ricky Jackson was on that team, and I'm glad Ricky got the ring, but I was still pulling for that was the year
Stan Humphries.
I was pulling for Stan Humphries and the
Chargers. From right here in Monroe, Louisiana.
Yeah. That was Ross, the coach.
Bobby Ross.
Bobby Ross is the coach of that team. But, I wanted the Chargers to win that game, because I did not want to reward George Seifert for having a super team. They put this team together, all these free agents. That bugged me, So, anyway. Okay, so, we kind of veered off course. Said no, it's fine. I mean, it's off-season time. So, who are some of your favorite players? And obviously, Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, Tracy Porter. But who are some of your favorite players that wore number 22?
For me, it's Tracy Porter and Mark Ingram.
Okay. How about you, Bob?
You definitely got to give homage to the last 3 players that have worn it: Tracy Porter, Mark Ingram, and Gardner Johnson for obvious reasons. My heart still belongs to those Dome Patrol teams. And Van Jakes, a backup cornerback, for the early Mora teams, 88 or 86 through 88 or 89. Van Jakes was one of those players in the secondary. You didn't. He'd get burned all game long, and then he'd come up with a key fourth quarter interception to preserve like a 13-12 victory or something like that. So Van Jakes has always stuck with me. Gil Fenerty is another guy from the early 90s, special teams demon, and just one of those scrappy guys that you like to see do well when he got the shot on offense. But I mean, even those guys, they don't compare to the last three guys that have worn 22.
Yeah. I mean, I was going to bring up Lorenzo Neal.
Yeah.
Wore 22 when he first came. And I still remember the American Bowl that was played in Tokyo, Japan. And Lorenzo Neal got into a ring with a sumo wrestler, and they showed that footage during the game. And Lorenzo Neal immediately goes for the neck and the face, and like going for this sport. And like, okay, that's illegal in Japan. That's not how you wrestle. Sumo wrestler doesn't know what's going on, but Neal had the huge legs, and he was a former wrestler. So yeah, he's driving that sumo wrestler, even if you didn't put the face and hand in the guy's face.
I wish his career could have flourished here the way that it did in other places.
Yeah.
And it's because he was just a fullback. He started out as a running back, and then he broke his foot his rookie year here. And they told him, well, your speed is basically gone, so you're going to have to become a fullback, a power fullback, short yardage guy. And he just became this devastating blocker. And I think every year, but the years he was with the Saints, he blocked for 1,000-yard rusher every year of his career.
It's something crazy like that.
It's like
he himself went to like 7 Pro Bowls. He's one of those guys that could sneak into the Hall of Fame someday, and I'd love to see it. And Neal, Drew Brees has said repeatedly that Lorenzo Neal is one of his favorite teammates ever, and the two of them played together in San Diego for 2 or 3 years.
He's not.
Before Brees came here.
He's not Mario Bates' favorite teammate.
No, he's not.
No, because if you're Club 57, Ricky Jackson's old club, where there's a CarMax is there now. But back then there was a bar, Club 57. Lorenzo Neal is out there, and it's time for Mario Bates to pay for his round of drinks. And Mario Bates didn't want to pay, and Lorenzo Neal cold-cocked him and broke his jaw. I mean, yeah.
Was Bates a rookie? Was that a rookie? I remember the story.
But for some reason, I think Bates and Neal were both rookies. So I don't know why Neal was pissed off that I guess Neal had paid for a round. So it was now, Mario Bates' turn, and you get this whole Goodfellas, Joe Pesci scene that forms because he didn't pay for a round of drinks. I mean, or Christopher and what's that guy's name in The Sopranos with the funky hair? Paulie. Christopher and Paulie, when Christopher didn't want to pay for dinner. Because he was tired of paying for dinner all the time. You had one of those kind of scenes. Wouldn't pick up the check.
What sticks out to me about Lorenzo Neal, you look back on it, and obviously all three of us are Saints historians. Lorenzo Neal and Willie Roaf became a Saint because of Pat Swilling. And Pat Swilling was my favorite Saint, but when the Saints traded Pat Swilling to the Lions, they got a first round and a fourth round pick in return. And those draft picks ended up being Willie Roaf and Lorenzo Neal.
I was extremely upset when the Saints traded Pat Swilling to the Lions, because like you, he was my favorite Saint of the Dome Patrol. And it's not to knock anybody else, but you look at that that team, that group of linebackers, the flashy guy, the guy who got all the sacks, the guy who was blowing it off the line, that was Pat Swilling. So, it was hard for me because I'm like, man, how do you make up for that production? And oh shoot, the guy who wanted to be a stockbroker more than a defensive end. The first round draft pick, number 97, Ronaldo Turnbull.
Yeah.
Ronaldo Turnbull had a career year, the first year that Swilling was gone, 94. He had 13 and a half sacks or something like that. Not 17 like Pat did, but it was tough. And then watching Pat get put in the wrong defenses for the Lions and then the Raiders, it crushed me because I'm like, he's too good. Almost wanted him in Blitzburg, but by that time his career was pretty much over. But he would have been a great guy. Suppose Kevin Green doesn't go over there. You put him on the opposite side of I can't believe I'm forgetting all these players' name. What's his name? Joey Porter. No, not Joey Porter. Number 95. Greg Lloyd. You put him on the opposite side of Greg Lloyd. I mean, that's Blitzburg. So it was great. Real quick, a couple of Saints that guys most people don't remember. Elijah Pitts wore number 22 for the Saints. Elijah Pitts is a former Packer. He kind of was finishing his career by this time, but his son, Ron Pitts, is the guy who does the, color commentary was on Fox, now it's on CBS. So, there's a Saints connection there. One of my favorite names for a cornerback for the Saints, D'Artagnan Martin of the Three Musketeers fame. There's somebody named their kid after a member of the Three Musketeers. But D'Artagnan Martin, he only played 1 year for the Saints. But they made a big deal about calling the Saints secondary the Four Musketeers because of that guy at Archie's rookie year. Howard Stevens, who is the answer to a Saints trivia question, who is the shortest player to ever play for the Saints? Really? Howard Stevens is shorter than Darren Sproles. He's shorter than
holy shit.
Yeah, he's shorter than Deontay Harris. Howard Stevens is 5'5".
Wow.
Yeah, and he ended up actually finishing his career with the Colts. He only played 5 years, and he weighed like 175 pounds. He was a kick returner and a running back. So you should look up Mac Heron too, number 42 for the New England Patriots. I'm in one of the 70s football groups, and they had a picture of the Patriots all together. And Mac Heron's in the picture. I'm like, is he sitting on somebody's lap? Because Mac Heron was like 5'3", 5'4". He was little. His jersey, I think they bought him a special jersey, but when he tucked his jersey in, his 42, just the bottom half of the 2 disappeared into his pants. It was hilarious. I mean, look up Mac Heron. True story. One of the shortest players ever played in the NFL. But yeah, shorter than Freddie Mac too. Somebody's asking. Shorter than Freddie Mac. Yeah. So Howard Stevens. If anyone asks who's the shortest Saints player to ever play, one of the tallest. It's I cannot remember his name. Farquhar. Not the guy from Shrek, but he was a tight end. He was like 6'8". That was one of the tallest players ever played for the Saints.
That's the same height as Manhurts was, wasn't it?
Yeah. It's something like that. He's like 6'8", 6'9", somewhere around there. But yeah, he was a tight end. Yeah, Freddie Mac is 5'10". Yeah, just Freddie Mac looks smaller. But yeah, and then, going back in time, Tyrone Anthony, he was a running back under the Bum Phillips era, number 22. Yep. Ricky Ray played for the 79-80 Saints defense. He's the one that got toasted a lot in those games. He was a cornerback. Last one to bring up, Michael Mays. He was a cornerback, played 1 season, didn't even start. He was a former LSU player. Drafted as a cornerback, and he only played in the 89 season and I cannot even remember him being on the field, honestly. I can think of Calvin Nicholson. I can think of Milton Mack. Those
Mhm.
guys I remember. I don't remember seeing Michael Mays on the field at all. So that tells you about how bad he was. And I think he was a third-round pick. So, yeah, 2 is a much, much shorter list. And, yeah, the only players that really stand out are the 2 quarterbacks, Brooks
Yeah.
and Winston. So, okay. Saints made some coaching moves. And that was one of the things we put on the show. Mostly it promoted from within. And Sean, you weren't here last week. Bob, you and I got dropped off, and he had all kinds of crap go on last week. But I wanted to get y'all's take on promoting Carmichael or keeping Carmichael as offensive coordinator after they went. He said he didn't. Or the stories were that he didn't want the job,
Yep.
and they went and interviewed all these people. What do you think about Carmichael being there
Here's my
as the
gut
offensive
feeling.
coordinator?
Yeah, because they, as we've talked about in the recent weeks, they had interviewed three or four candidates from outside the organization. Because of the way it worked out, I believe that Carmichael is kind of eyeing up retirement, or at least taking a couple of steps back from the game altogether. And this year he was planning on being one of those senior offensive consultants, because when it was initially announced that he was not going to be the offensive coordinator in 2022, it was also announced that he was going to remain with the team in some capacity.
Mm-hmm.
And it's my feeling that Dennis Allen or Mickey Loomis or both of them didn't really become enamored with any of the candidates, younger candidates, the Scotty Montgomerys, the Robert Princes that they interviewed. So I think they went, and this is just my gut feeling, that they went to Carmichael and said, "Listen, can you be our OC for one more year? We just don't have that guy to step in for you yet that we feel comfortable with." Because again, remember, Dennis Allen is not an offensive guy, so they need an experienced offensive staff, and they just did not like what they saw out of the candidates that they interviewed. So Carmichael is, to borrow your expression, Alan, Carmichael is sort of the devil that they know.
Mm-hmm.
And they have had a lot of success with him, designing the game plans. So they obviously feel comfortable with him doing the play calling on game days now that Sean Payton is obviously not there. And then that makes all the more sense. This theory of mine makes all the more sense with them bringing in that young wide receivers coach that they just brought in, promoted from the University of Tennessee earlier today or yesterday.
Yeah. Sean, so I'm asking you now, Carmichael coming back as offensive coordinator, do you think that's going to signify that it's more important to have continuity in the offense, or
I really believe it is.
Okay.
It is.
I was gonna say.
And to kind of piggyback off what Bob was saying, I believe basically the same thing. Either DA or Loomis or the two of them just more or less asked him to serve another season to help out the organization. And I'm glad, to be honest, I'm glad that he was professional enough to accept it.
Yeah.
Oh, I am too. I mean, the thing about Pete Carmichael is that he knows the offense. It'll be interesting to see what kind of games he calls without Sean Payton being involved in the game planning. Because calling the plays during the game, Sean and Pete, and when Drew was there, Drew would go through all the plays and star what they like. And it's all situational. If you could zoom in on Peyton's play calling sheet, they're all based on down and distance and where they are in the field. and they've got certain things starred, and the notes he's jotting is based on certain defensive looks he's looking for. And you've seen enough of the NFL films footage where Sean says, "This is the look we were looking for. This is the matchup we like," and he calls a play.
Mhm.
You know, he's got every situation mapped out in that friggin' Denny's menu.
Yeah.
You know, he calls a play calling sheet. I think that's where I'm really curious to see how Carmichael works, because him just saying the play into Drew's ear or any quarterback's ear is one thing, but coming up with that plan during the week and spotting the same things that Payton spotted, that's what I think that's going to be the challenge. Do you think he's on a short leash? I'm asking both of y'all. You know, do you think he's on a short leash?
I don't know that I would call it a short leash, so much as I don't even know what word I'm looking for. I don't think that Dennis Allen's gonna like keep him under his thumb. I don't think he can afford to. Actually,
no, I don't think he's going to do that. But Bob.
Yeah, I'd agree with what Sean says. I can't. He won't be on a short leash because who else are you going to turn to? Dennis Allen is not going to take over the offensive play calling. The other coaches that they brought in, Cody Burns, the receivers coach from Tennessee. He's a younger guy. This is his first NFL job. John Morton has been around. Doug Marrone has not only been around, but been an offensive coordinator, a head coach, been an OC for the Saints. So that would be the only, if the offense mightily struggled early in the year, and Dennis Allen believes that it's play calling, I suppose it's possible he could hand those duties off to Marrone, but that is literally the only other recourse that you'd have. So I think they're going to ride or die with Pete Carmichael offensively this year.
Okay.
This is going to be a very interesting year because it's going to be basically the same team and the same staff, but it's going to be a remarkably different team, in my opinion.
It's got almost a 2012 vibe for me because there's no Sean Payton. So how is this team, except that Sean's not coming back, how is this team going to respond to that? And that leads to my next two questions. The first one is, how much turnover do you think this franchise is going to have now in the players? You know, if we're going to be this consistent with the coaches, are they going to try and basically put together much of the same team and just say, okay, we just need to be healthier? Or do you think there's going to be a shift in a lot of the players now that you've got someone else in charge? And the second one is, of the new coaches that brought back, you know, Doug Marrone, we've talked about, he's got a Payton link. But Cody Burns has no link to Payton. What do you think Cody Burns is going to do, and why do you think he was the choice or why do you think he was one of the positions they decided to replace, given Curtis Johnson's legacy with this team?
Cody Burns has SEC ties. I mean, we mentioned a couple of times how he's not only coming from the University of Tennessee, but he was only there 1 year. He was there at Auburn for 3 or 4 years before that. So yeah, he's not only got a pulse on the offense of the SEC, but also from a position where the Saints have the most glaring roster need at wide receiver. He's a young guy. He's considered a very dynamic coach. And I think this entire offensive staff, offensive system could use that infusion of an explosive personality, something that Payton was very much so early in his career. But and Sean Payton is an intense guy no matter what. You're now taking him out of the equation. Do you consider Pete Carmichael an intense guy? No.
No.
Curtis Johnson? No. Joel Thomas, the running backs coach? No. Even Doug Marrone? Not so much. Mm-mm. So I think I see Cody bringing a different kind of youthful enthusiasm to the entire staff. and I'm excited to see what is how that's gonna unfold.
Sean, do you think Curtis Johnson was kind of escorted out um, because of the failure of the receiving core to develop other receivers outside of Michael Thomas over the past couple of years?
Well, my initial reaction to that would be no, because it was painfully obvious that we were understaffed at that position. That wasn't any big
Mm,
secret. I think Curtis may have seen that there's a change in the head coach, and it's not going to be like it used to be.
Calvin not pulling punches. Well, honestly, Calvin, and this is my take on this. I think that Curtis Johnson, I don't want to say is played out because I hate that term,
Yeah.
but I think the receivers stopped listening to him. And I think Dennis Allen and the staff saw it. That when Curtis Johnson got here, I think he had an intimidation factor and had a lot of street cred, because of the receivers he developed at the University of Miami in the 90s.
Yeah.
And I think the longer he had been with the Saints staff, especially his second go around after he came back from Tulane, I think that, he just wasn't getting the production out of the receivers that he got out of a Marcus Colston and a Lance Moore, and even Robert Meacham and Devery Henderson. Henderson had terrible hands, and he got Henderson to start catching the ball more consistently. Meacham could only run one route, and he never got to be the complete route tree, but he got to at least develop a couple routes and became a better blocker. I think, you look at a guy like Callaway, he should be further along than he is.
Yep.
And especially during the season, we should have seen that improvement. I can get it. He's not going to come out of the gate smoking, because he is an undrafted guy. But I think Callaway, by the end of the season, we should have seen Callaway catching the ball far more consistently. Not being a Marcus Colston, but at least be a Lance Moore to an extent. Just catch the ball. Don't fight it. It's like, you look at that Tampa game, for example, made the hard catches every time, but an easy one hits him right in the hands and he drops it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's why you see a change in the coaching staff on that point. That, these guys aren't great players, but they should work in this system. We can scheme you open. You just got to run good routes and catch the ball. So, yeah, Calvin's comment, as brutal as it is, bad route running and just lack of focus on so many of these receivers. They should have been better. I'm not talking Pro Bowl level, but they should have been better than they were.
They should have made a hell of a lot bigger contribution than what they did.
Well, Kenny Stills was
I've
garbage.
got two words that sums up the second Coach CJ stint with the New Orleans Saints. Traquan Smith.
Yeah.
That to kind of piggyback or highlight the points that you were making, Alan. Traquan Smith was a third-round draft choice. And, coming into the year, and I remember being on with you guys and, Sean giving me a couple raised eyebrows because I was just blasting the pick. I called him alligator hands and, things like that. Traquan Smith not only did not progress, he regressed. And it's one thing to not, because to your point, Sean, Coach wasn't given a whole lot to work with. I like Callaway. I love Deontay Harris. But the fact remains that they're both undrafted free agents. And, we got spoiled by the undrafted success of Lance Moore and even Willie Snead, 7th-round pick Marcus Colston. And Callaway and Harris, it's unfair to expect them to be that. But I think Harris is a hell of a football player, a terrific route runner for his size, good hands, tough player. just his size limitations. So, and the fact that he and Callaway were both undrafted, it's unfair to expect a guy to take a pile of shit and carve it into a Michelangelo.
You can't polish a turd. I'll never forget that saying, but that's what it is. You can't polish a turd, and that comes from the movie Christine.
And Callaway and certainly Harris are far better than that. But again, I think the lack of development from Traquan Smith, the axe had to fall somewhere because of that. It's not going to fall on your head coach who stepped away anyway. It's got to fall on your position coach.
Yeah. And that's I totally agree with that. And I think the same is true with the offensive line. That's why Doug Marrone is there. Cesar Ruiz has regressed. He's a first-round draft pick. They need better out of him. Andres Pete, I know people rip on him, but his biggest knock is that it's injured a lot. Yeah. He has an up and down performance. I get that too. But if he was there all the time, they would probably cut him a little more slack. But he's hurt all the time. But Cesar Ruiz is really, you've just got to circle him because you got rid of Larry Warford because he had gotten fat and lazy, and he's now out of football. So Cesar Ruiz is supposed to be an upgrade, and he has not been an upgrade. This is, he's still under the rookie contract. Marrone's got to turn this guy around because if not, he's gone after next season. My brother. Of course, my brother picked that quote because, we we both love that movie, Christine. God, that girl was hot in that movie too. And I watched it recently, and I'm just going, it's so 80s. It's supposed to take place in the late 70s, but the girl is so 80s. Yeah. But she was attractive. And I love that movie. I really do. I'd love to have a car that rebuilt itself. I could do it without the, murdering people, but the car can just rebuild itself after hitting people. I would be hell at 5 o'clock traffic, if my car could rebuild itself. But Ruiz just passed his man off again. Yeah. So
I saw PFF, Pro Football Focus, which is garbage anyway.
Oh yeah.
I saw they've defended Ruiz on Twitter quite a bit. Showing the bullshit grades that they have, how highly graded he was, and somebody, and I stayed out of it. But I saw a few comments that of course the guy's going to be highly graded if he never attempts to block anybody, and he just he steps aside like a turnstile.
Just him falling down like a child on. Sean loves that pull the guard play, and have the guard come out as the tackle on pass plays. He loves that play. Mm-hmm. And that's one of the reasons why Warford was let go, because he just could not get his ass in gear to make that run, to throw that block. And Ruiz could, but then you see him fall and roll like a 6-year-old in the playground when you ask him to run. He just tripped over his feet and collapsed. So, it's just he needs development. He has to develop, and I think that's one. And the strength and conditioning coach, same thing. Mm-hmm. All these injuries this team has had, and the same players getting injured year after year after year. They think they say it's conditioning. It's got to be the conditioning on these guys. They need to be, Pete needs to be stronger, leaner, more muscle development. Not a big fat guy, because he doesn't have natural strength. He's not Jim Dombrowski is a good comparison. Jim Dombrowski was a fat guy with a lot of strength.
That is a good one.
Natural strength. That's not Pete. Pete needs a great weight program that gets his body chiseled. He cannot have the physique of a Zach Streif. Zach Streif's got one shape, round.
Yeah.
but he had strength, natural strength. So, okay, so Calvin throws this out here, and I was going to bring this up next. So you look at the Saints free agents: Armstead, Marcus Williams, Jameis Winston. Let's just forget the salary cap right now because we know the Saints are going to restructure deals to get under the cap.
That's one thing that you've never heard anybody in the world be able to say is the Saints cannot do that because of the salary cap.
This is true. I mean, they trimmed $100 million last year.
Yeah.
So you can do this. But the question becomes, is this offseason going to be more about bringing back the players that you have, like Armstead, Marcus Williams, and Jameis Winston? Or is this going to be one of those, okay, we didn't change our offensive staff and the defensive staff a whole heck of a lot, but we're going to get different players? Is this going to be that kind of offseason?
Guys, we're going to find out real quick. First and foremost, I think much of the defense is going to stay the same. We've seen zero change in the continuity of the staff, and why would you?
Mm-hmm.
Most of those defensive guys are under contract, are young and in their prime. Quan Alexander and Marcus Williams are two big ones, though. Malcolm Jenkins is another one to watch. Malcolm has an extremely high cap figure. One that has very little dead caps money if they release him. And Malcolm played all right last year, but he's clearly lost a step in coverage. He's the team's oldest player. So I think, and we'll talk cap cuts, I know, in upcoming weeks, but that's a name to watch. They franchise tagged Marcus Williams last year. I think it's a strong possibility they do it again, because if they don't, all of a sudden, safety jumps right up near the top of this team's needs list. Especially whether Malcolm Jenkins stays or goes, that would be the case. PJ Williams is big. I think that they can re-sign him, but it's not going to be for one of those piddly one-year deals that they got away with the last 2 or 3 years. They're going to have to shell out a little bit of money to keep him. Quan, they can afford to lose. If they get Quan back, it's because Quan wants to come back, and therefore he's going to agree to do so at a fairly reasonable rate. So, we just hit all the major names. Shai Tuttle and Carl Granderson are restricted free agents, which are situations to watch. Calvin, I love you, man, and you're right.
Well, you just mentioned my grandfather's favorite boxer. That's hilarious. Rocky Marciano.
But those are the key defensive names to watch. So again, you can shuffle your numbers so that that you get most, if not all, of your defensive personnel back. The offensive names, and I'll let Sean jump in here in a minute before we jump to the offensive side. The offensive names are going to be what truly tells the tale very, very early on this offseason.
I've said several times that if it came down to a choice of you can only keep one of the two between Teron Armstead and Marcus Williams, I'd take Marcus Williams every time.
Yep.
This team absolutely needs Marcus Williams.
I agree with that, because you don't have anything behind him. You really don't have anything behind Malcolm Jenkins either. I mean, you could slide Chauncey Gardner-Johnson over there, but is Chauncey Gardner-Johnson really better there, or is your free range nickel back, corner linebacker, safety hybrid kind of guy? And that's the trick, because you could put him in that spot. I just don't know if you use him as effectively.
I would hate to see Quan leave simply because I love the way that he and Demario Davis play together.
I think of all the players you can get back cheaply, I think Quan is one of the ones you probably can get back cheaply. If he's a guy that would probably be willing to take less money to stay with the Saints. Other guys, I'm not so sure of, because Teron Armstead, he is really a Cincinnati Bengals 10-year, $100 million contract offer away from walking away from the Saints. And obviously, it won't be 10 years, but I mean, I can see him getting the mega money.
Yeah.
Because they'll say, we want you protecting Joe Burrow's blind side. And
he could have used Teron Armstead in that second half.
Yep, and Teron Armstead's only going to play. When you sign him, he's only going to play about 10 games.
Mm-hmm.
If that.
Where those 10 games fall depends on how well you do in the postseason.
Yeah.
Because if he just plays the first 10 games and then he tears a pec or tears a knee or does whatever, that's when you're going to lose him. It works. You rather lose Teron Armstead during the early part of the season.
And that's one of many reasons why I don't think Teron Armstead is going to be back. That right then and there, because as he gets older, and he's approaching 31 years old. Those injuries are going to keep him out even longer.
Yes.
And Teron Armstead loves the Gulf Coast region. He loves the New Orleans Saints. He'll rightfully be in the Saints Hall of Fame someday. I'm sure of it. But he's also not going to accept a hometown discount to come back and play. Spot Track has his next yearly contract at around $24 million a year, which I know seems high. And I know the people that want to keep Armstead in New Orleans are always going to say, "Oh, he's not going to get that much because he's always hurt." No, he is going to get that much because he's that damn good. Another franchise, just like New Orleans has done with Jarris Byrd and countless other injured players when they brought them in. Well, that was another team. He won't, we'll condition him better, et cetera, et cetera. Now, Teron Armstead is Teron Armstead. The Saints cannot franchise tag him, by the way, because those voidable years that Loomis added on makes Armstead's deal not officially done until March 16th, a week after the salary or the franchise tag designation has to be applied. So, really at that point, it comes down to, are the Saints going to be able to get in a bidding? Are they going to want to get in a bidding war with other teams for Teron Armstead? And the answer is no. I think the writing was on the wall when Ryan Ramczyk signed his deal last year with that hefty salary increase if he plays at left tackle. You have James Hurst, who is an experienced starter at either tackle spot, and the team really loves Landon Young, who we as fans got to see very little of him because he got hurt after one game. But because of all those reasons, I don't think offensive tackle is nearly as big a need, even without Armstead, as what some people will have you believe.
You brought up exactly what I was going to mention. The contract that Ramczyk signed has provision for him going to left tackle, and that should have told everybody what the Saints' plan is going to be. They're going to let Armstead walk. They're going to make an offer. They will listen to offers, but left tackles are very expensive. They're in high demand. I mean, just watch the opening of the Blind Side movie. She talks about the importance of a left tackle. They're rare to find. So a team like the Bengals are going to pay big money to get one, even if he's not going to guarantee play 16 games or 17 games now. He'll probably play about 10. So you'll move Ramczyk to left tackle, and they feel like we could put Landon Young or Hurst or a rookie at right tackle. And again, this is why they brought Doug Marrone in.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to have to coach up this guy to be the right tackle, and we'll have Ramczyk at left tackle. So I think that's where that goes. I think Marcus Williams is the number one priority for the Saints to sign first.
Absolutely.
Because they do not want to use a franchise tag again and have him play under the tag all season again. They want to be able to have that flexibility to get a lower cap number so they can bring in other players.
If they do franchise tag Williams, at number one, that would put his tag figure for safeties is about 13.6 million. But you're right. If they tag him, it's because they have every intention of signing him to a long-term deal before training camp. So if they tag Williams, I don't want to see people coming out of the woodwork saying, they're overpaying for a safety. No, I think it's because they already know that they will be able to get a deal in place with Marcus Williams. They just don't want him to hit the open market before that happens.
No, absolutely not. Okay, so Jimmy Gumbo, 1002 wants to know Zach Bond and Pete Werner ready to step up at linebacker. I would say Werner is ready to step up, so that's why I say Quan would have to take a hometown discount to come back. But I think Werner is ready to play. Zach Bond, I'm afraid, is just going to be a special teams guy. Unfortunately, I don't think he has the instincts to play linebacker at the NFL level. He was a tweener. He was a pass rushing defensive end, kind of that hybrid guy. He's too small to do that in the NFL, but he's got outstanding speed. So it makes him a valuable special teams guy. And I think that's where he really fits the best. And it's not a bad thing. You think about, we talk about Fred McAfee, Steve Tasker, a lot of guys have made a career out of strictly being special teams guys. So it's not a negative thing, but that's just how I feel about Zach Bond,
I agree.
He's kind of the Craig Robertson of the defense. He's a guy. Not Robertson had the experience, but he's the kind of guy you can get him and you can hide him for a little while. But teams figure out, 53's out there. Let's start testing him in coverage. Yeah, and that was Robertson's weakness.
If the Saints had to go into the 2022 season without Quan Alexander, I guarantee you that Caden Ellis would get snaps at linebacker before Zach Bond would. And Caden is not strong in coverage either, but at least he has more of a linebacker mentality as far as pass coverage goes. I agree with you guys. I think Pete Werner is ready to play. I think they made that draft pick with the idea that we're not going to have Quan Alexander either for 2021. And people forget how miraculous it was that Quan even came back to play as early as he did. That was just gravy that they got Quan Alexander back, at all, let alone when they did. So to get Quan back, and he and DeMario have formed a very, very close relationship. So it wouldn't surprise me if Quan took a little bit less to stay with New Orleans than he would get with another team. But the long-term plan is for Pete Werner to take over the main linebacking duties.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of that number either. I don't like my linebackers with numbers in the 20s or numbers in the 40s. I'm sorry, I'm old school. My linebackers have to be numbers in the 50s or the 90s. Either of those numbers.
It's like giving a wide receiver number 75.
Yeah, or a quarterback number 21 or 22.
Right.
Bobby Lane or John Hadel's number. Yeah, it's just not right. Okay, so this is coming. So Winston's the other guy. Again, my thing about Winston, and yes, he does have the highest upside of the guys that if we had to have free agency today, I'm assuming in this case, Aaron Rodgers goes back to the Packers and Russell Wilson goes back to the Seahawks. So, you're looking at and the 49ers want the moon for Jimmy Garoppolo, something totally unrealistic, like 2 number ones or some stupid shit like that. So, Jameis Winston would be the top available free agent quarterback. How much competition do you think it would be for the Saints to re-sign Jameis Winston?
Sean?
I believe Jameis wants to stay in New Orleans because they gave him the opportunity to reinvent himself. And I still say the games that Winston played last year, by no means were they flawless, but he played well. I was actually shocked at the level of play that he put up. I don't know how quickly other teams are going to run to Jameis to try to enlist him to play for them. And Aaron Rodgers is not going to the Broncos. Aaron Rodgers is going to Lambeau Field, and that's the only place he's ever going to play. And Russ ain't leaving Seattle. I don't care what they say. I can't see it happening.
Well, I'm looking at, and Sean, I mean, Bob, I'm going to ask your opinion on this too, but I'm looking at teams like, I just mentioned the Broncos, the Bucks now, because Brady retired. Are they going to turn it over to Kyle Trask, or are they going to be looking for somebody? Carolina's always looking for a quarterback because they've so screwed up their roster looking for a quarterback. The Steelers looking for a quarterback. The Saints are looking for a quarterback. It seems like there's a market for Jameis that wasn't there 2 or 3 years ago. How do you feel, Bob, about Jameis coming back here? What kind of contract would he be looking for?
I want Jameis back in New Orleans. I've been a Jameis fan since they signed him 2 years ago. And I've also said for the last 2 months that if Jameis Winston is not a New Orleans Saint in 2022, it's because he's going to be a Pittsburgh Steeler. I see that fit. Or if not the Steelers, the Washington Redskins are at the top of that list too.
I didn't mention them, yeah.
Yeah, people that have Jameis Winston tied to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are out of their flipping minds. Jameis has a chip on his shoulder from his time there. He does not want to play for Bruce Arians again. Bruce Arians doesn't want him again. So just rule that out. Pittsburgh and Washington have got to be the top 2 contenders for Jameis Winston's services if he hits the open market. But that's the key. I think Carmichael coming back is vital to having Jameis Winston back in New Orleans. And all of us are in agreement that the Saints offense is not going to be the Sean Payton offense, but there's going to be some similarities. Some similarities that Jameis Winston, by the way, is familiar with because he's now been in that system 2 years.
Yeah.
He's not going to take a hometown discount to come back to New Orleans like he did last year because he's proven himself just enough. Because I agree with what you said, Sean. Everybody always knew that Jameis Winston could be a productive passer. What we learned from Jameis in 2021 was that he could take care of a football and learn a complex system. And I think that Saints offense was just opening up when he went down for the year. I think that even without Michael Thomas, I think you see an entirely different Saints offense if Jameis Winston stays upright and healthy. And I think his next contract is going to be around 3 years with maybe an option for a 4th. And I wrote it in my franchise tag article this afternoon. While I expect Marcus Williams to likely be the one to get a franchise tag, if the Saints give it this year, do not be surprised if Jameis Winston is franchise tagged by the New Orleans Saints. The franchise tag number for quarterbacks is $28.6 million, which is going to be higher than what Jameis's real contract turns out to be. But if New Orleans identifies him as he's the guy we want, at least for this year, and we think we can get him signed to a long-term deal before training camp, just like with Marcus Williams, you get that guy franchise tag now, so that way you don't have to get into a bidding war with him. If you don't get him signed to a longer term deal before training camp, then at least you have your quarterback for 2022. You can kind of regroup yourself, look towards next year's draft or next year's free agency class where there might be some more enticing names, if that makes any sense at all.
No, it makes perfect sense. The difficult part about all of this is you have to look at it in terms of what quarterbacks are available right now, not the quarterbacks that might be available. So the Kirk Cousins and the Jimmy Garoppolos and even Russell Wilson, Aaron Rodgers, those are the maybe available
Yeah.
But you don't want to get in that situation where
Yeah.
you let Winston go out there and go find his value, and his value may be greater than what you're willing to pay. So who's going to be your fallback option? And unfortunately, for a lot of people, look, my son, if he is your fallback, if Winston's gone, your fallback option is going to be Taysom Hill, who you have under contract already, or and maybe a guy like Teddy Bridgewater, because he's somebody who else is familiar with your offense.
Yeah.
Or and you have to look to the draft, and you're looking at Corral, Pickett, Strong, Willis, those guys.
Where you're
And
overdrafting for potential.
Yes, overdrafting for potential. Exactly. So it opens up a whole bunch of doors that maybe you don't want to open. The only way you let Winston go at this point is you have a deal in place for a Garoppolo, or you have a deal in place for Cousins. And I'm just throwing those two guys out there because those are guys you're going to have to trade for. And you have to have something in place that you've got this thing, it's all good to go, and you're set, and you're just like, hey, Jameis, see ya, don't want to be you. And they could very well go that route. I finally figured out why I keep calling Corral, the quarterback, Frank Corral, because I'm watching, again, we started the show talking about the Rams. I'm watching Super Bowl 14, Rams versus the Steelers, and Frank Corral's kicking field goals, number 3. And I'm going, that's why I keep calling him that, because I hear the Corral. Oh, you're a kicker. That's how my mind works. It's like Al Del Greco. The only Del Grecos I know is a kicker, Al Del Greco.
I remember the three of us sitting here talking right after Jameis Winston went down, having this same sort of conversation. And I do remember saying at the time, too, that we're going to find out about a week before free agency what the Saints' intentions are at quarterback. This is not going to be a drama that lasts well into the offseason. As far as the direction goes, maybe the names might be interchangeable. If Jameis Winston is not franchise tagged by March 8th, which is the deadline, then at that point, I believe, like you said, that the Saints have a deal in place for somebody. Be it Cousins, let me vomit off screen now. Be it Garoppolo, let me vomit on top of the Cousins vomit. Or somebody like, they go big name hunting, Watson, Wilson, whoever. Because I think another key thing that was revealed by Carmichael being the offensive coordinator again this year, if it was a young guy, a young unproven guy, a Scotty Montgomery, for instance, maybe that comes with the assurance from Dennis Allen and secret assurances from Dennis Allen, Mickey Loomis, and ownership that we're going to bring in a young offensive coordinator. With him is coming a first-round quarterback. With that is going to come bumps. Therefore, you're going to get our patience. That patience is not going to be there. It doesn't need to be there with Pete Carmichael. That tells us, in my opinion, that the Saints are either going to go back with Winston or have some kind of veteran assurance behind center in 2022 at least.
I can see that. I can see that. Okay, so I had to throw this in there. So they're asking, Calvin asked, do the Commanders have a mascot yet? Is Arnold Schwarzenegger with a cigar in his mouth for the mascot? That would be fitting on the thing. Get to the chopper. But I said that the cheerleaders would be called the Commandos. So, let's just go from there. So yeah, I
talk about upside.
Oh well, they were halfway there anyway, according to the scandals that are going on in Washington
Right.
about that.
They're going to wind up taking that franchise away from Snyder.
Good.
Youth. Everyone says that, but unless they've got an owner in place, I can't see them forcing him to sell. Because that's too important of a market for them. They want somebody, and Snyder actually makes them a lot of money. That's the other thing. Jerry Jones is a total jerk, and I can't stand him, but he makes money for that team. Yeah, we talked about Watson last week, and I just can't see Watson being moved. I mean, I've seen the rumors and everything else, him going to Carolina, him going to Tampa. I just can't see, with the legal trouble he's got over his head, no one making that move for a guy who could end up in jail. I just don't see that. Okay, now we're quoting the movie. You know who's in that movie, right? Commando with Schwarzenegger. Very young Alyssa Milano.
Yeah,
you remember that?
You're right.
Yeah.
You're right.
She plays the kidnapped girl.
Now she plays a liberal psychopath.
Oh, well, yeah, she's nuts. But especially on Twitter, she's nuts.
She's cuckoo as Cocoa Puffs, man.
She was really cute and charmed, though. I'll tell you that much. She was really.
I didn't say she was ugly.
Yeah.
My wife is in the next room, and I would like to be able to go to bed tonight. So I would like to get back on the rails, please.
Avoid those topics. I got you. So the last thing before we go then tonight.
Is that a laser sight on the back of your head?
Yeah. What's that red dot? What? Oh. Yeah.
I know Miss Lauren, and I don't think I would be willing to say she probably don't have a good sense of humor about stuff like that.
Actually, she would while I'm on air with you guys.
Oh yeah, you're a funny guy.
This would be the longest show ever.
Yeah.
Right. Under the Dome Marathon.
Yeah, there we go. Let's have it like a telethon. So we're talking about Saints improving stuff. So we talk about the new wide receiver coach. Obviously we have to upgrade wide receiver. Tight end, there's a lot of interesting names out there. We talk about the franchise tag. I suspect that the good list will get whittled down to the okay list, once they issue the franchise tags. Because this is why Jimmy Graham was tagged as a tight end, not a receiver. The cap figure is a lot lower than compared to a wide receiver, so it's a lot easier to tag a tight end.
Yes.
Of a lot of the names, is there anybody that really jumps out at you? You say, "Hey, this is a guy we should watch," as maybe a guy that they could look at and get in here as a pass catching tight end.
Are you talking free agency or draft?
In free agency.
Okay. Yeah, there's a few names, Alan, and I believe that the Saints are going to bring in a free agent tight end and kind of ignore the free agent wide receiver market because of what you just said. The price tag is so different. You can get a big name tight end for the same price that you could get a mid-tier wide receiver. Meanwhile, as far as rookies go, you see a whole lot more impact from rookie wide receivers than you do rookie tight ends. Yeah. My favorite name on the tight end list is Mike Gesicki. He's also going to be the most expensive free agent tight end if he hits the market. He's also the one to most likely get franchise tagged.
I expect him to be franchise tagged.
CJ Uzomah from the Bengals. I love him. I don't think he's going to get out of Cincinnati. Same with Tanyan out of Green Bay. Two guys that I really, really like, though, that I do believe will hit the market. Hayden Hurst from Atlanta. Because Atlanta's not going to pay him top dollar. Not with Kyle Pitts there. Hayden Hurst. And three names. I'll take that back. Hayden Hurst, David Njoku from the Browns, and O.J. Howard from the Buccaneers. I believe all three of those guys will be available. And all three of those guys are pretty solid blockers A guy like Gesicki, he's Graham reincarnated, a hell of a pass catcher. Not going to give you much blocking. Willing blocker, but not a tough short yardage blocker.
No.
Hurst, Njoku, and Howard. They're all big bodies who can come off of the line as well as line up in the slot and be legitimate downfield weapons for your offense.
I really like Njoku.
And I'm, well, of course, Calvin and I are in agreement on this one. I like the idea of getting OJ Howard away from the Bucks. The question with OJ Howard always has been focus and injuries. But I think, if you can get something, and he would be someone who'd be inexpensive. Yes, I know Gronkowski is going to retire, but I just feel like the Bucks have kind of had enough of OJ Howard. They feel like he's underachieved, and I think maybe a new start and this kind of system where he's used more as a pass catcher, you might see something out of him. Hurst would be an interesting addition. But yeah, the Browns tight end, I think I like the most. I've seen Slayton's name come up too. I know that isn't he a receiver?
Yes.
Okay. I see Slayton's name get mentioned a lot because he comes from Tennessee, and it seems like he'd be a good fit. But I agree with you. I think that they would spend more money on a tight end right now than a receiver. And, Donald's bringing him up, Juju Smith-Schuster. There's somebody that's never going to see the market. The Steelers are going to hold on to him. They can't afford to let him go. Most of those big guys, those big names are going to be off the board. We don't even know I don't even know if Godwin's going to make it out of they tagged him last year. So I don't know if he'll make it out of Tampa. I would love to get Michael Gallup away from Dallas.
Mm-hmm.
He would be an interesting guy. He's coming off an injury, so you might be able to get him fairly inexpensively. But honestly, I think you're looking more along the lines of an Allen Robinson. You have to look at more of an older receiver, who's an experienced route runner, who's probably played in a few systems. That's generally the kind of guy they're going to bring in. Somebody to be like an Emmanuel Sanders kind of receiver. I think if they hit the free agent market, that's who they're going to look at. I mean, Bob, how do you feel?
I still say we never should have gotten rid of him.
Unfortunately, that was a salary cap cut.
I get it.
It was a 1 year rental for him.
Yeah. Especially with the situation turning out the way that it did with Thomas, that would have been a nice luxury to have.
Absolutely.
But yeah, I agree with you. I think guys like Allen Robinson, Chris Godwin, probably Michael Gallup, definitely Devontae Adams, Mike Williams. If those guys hit the market, their price tag is going to be ridiculous. And the Saints are going to go into 2022 with Michael Thomas. You do not bring in another bona fide number one at a diva position, because that's just asking for trouble when you're a new head coach.
Yeah.
Therefore, in my opinion, another guy from Dallas to watch is Cedric Wilson, a guy I like a lot.
Yeah, he had a very good season.
Yeah. Or maybe a Rashard Higgins from the Browns. Russell Gage from the Falcons is flying under a lot of radars. Those are all guys that are number 2, 3 receivers, that would that could benefit from a change of scenery or the right system, and therefore be a number 2 wideout, at least while you develop, hopefully, fingers crossed, a number 1 or number 2 round draft choice at receiver to complement Thomas. Or maybe guys like Kansas City's Byron Pringle, Demarcus Robinson are also names I have eyes on.
Mm-hmm. Let me ask you, I'm just going to throw this name out there just because he's kind of bounced around the league. And I still think he probably will get some money. But a guy like Sammy Watkins, is he approaching the age that teams are going to start looking for a younger, cheaper replacement for him?
Yeah.
Or is he still he's still in that middle ground where you don't want to. You're not going to give him a cheap contract yet. You know, he can still get some money, some interest from a team.
Is he still in Buffalo?
Go ahead.
Is he still in
Yeah.
Buffalo?
I
Watkins?
believe.
Baltimore.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure.
in Baltimore.
I
Yeah,
wanted
he's
to
in
say that
Baltimore.
I remembered him leaving
Yeah.
Buffalo, but I wasn't for sure.
Yeah, he's 28 years old. He's in Baltimore, but you know, I'm looking at him versus, say, a Mike Williams, who is only a year younger, but probably will command a lot more money.
Oh yeah.
Just because he's a much more productive receiver. And so I guess those are the kind of guys I'm looking, just keeping an eye on to see if they make a move at wide receiver. I can see them waiting this second, probably the second and third week of free agency, once all the money's kind of settled down.
Yeah, and if they do that, and a guy like Sammy Watkins, AJ Green, DJ Chark, a couple of those guys might slip through the cracks of the early first week and a half period of where teams just throw around money haphazardly. At that point, a guy like Watkins, maybe Emmanuel Sanders, Chark, or AJ Green, one or two of those guys might slip through the cracks. Therefore, their price tag is going to come down a little bit. So yeah, I could completely see one of those guys, coming into New Orleans on. It'd be a 1-year deal.
Oh yeah,
where they can kind of revamp and restart their careers. And Zach Ertz, going back to tight end, Donald, Zach Ertz would be another good one. He'd fall in that. He's kind of the tight end version of what we're talking about, wide receiver wise. AJ Green, Sammy Watkins.
He's probably about a Ben Watson kind of tight end about in this point in his career. You probably get a good year out of him. And the reason why I'm saying a guy like Watkins as opposed to Chalk, the Saints historically have never been a team that wants to enter the draft with a hole that they've got to fill. They like to have some bodies out there, and you're probably going to draft a receiver in the first 2 days of the draft, at least one. Yeah. You're probably going to bring a running back in the first 2 days of the draft, maybe in the fourth round, but that we're going to get a compensatory third round pick. So you have a first, second, and a third. Now we traded one of our third round pick, so you'll have at least a third round pick. So yeah, I can see they're going to draft guys, but they definitely want to avoid having a hole that they have to fill in this draft class. All right, so I mean, clearly we're going to get into much more detail on this. It's just kind of scratching the surface, but I really wanted to get y'all's take on what positions that the Saints are going to try and fill in free agency first. And it sounds like we're pretty much in agreement that they're going to address their own guys before they go out there and start shopping, And I think those first three players are going to be Williams, Winston, and then what are they going to do with Armstead? Do they let him walk, or do they go ahead and try and re-sign him to keep him one more year? And I think we both, all three of us, agree that they're probably going to let Armstead walk just because of the money, And that's always been my fear. They can't afford to get into bidding wars this year. They just don't have the money to do that. You can play with the cap, but the reality is, you've got to pay your own players first.
Right. And that's why they've been able to play with the cap for the last few years, is because they don't get themselves in a position to get into bidding wars with anybody.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And you definitely don't want to, like I said, you don't want holes in your roster. You may not like the guys that get to replace it. If you let Armstead walk and like we said, you move Ramczyk over, and now you have a competition between Hurst and Young at right tackle. You may not like either of those options, and the Saints may not like those options either, but it is the option they can go with. You don't have to go find yourself a right tackle in the draft. And I think that's the part that people really need to focus on when they look at free agency.
Yep.
So,
and there too, we're talking about a new head coach, and you have no idea of what his approach to free agency or the draft is going to be.
yeah, but we're going to get into more of this, but I think that's part of the continuity, that they're going to try and keep that same kind of continuity. So, last thing, and then we'll get out of here. Andres Pete at right tackle? No. Andres
Nope.
Pete's your guard. He is going to be your forever guard. He's quick on his feet, but like Calvin,
When he's on his feet.
Yeah, like Calvin said about Ruiz, he just doesn't have enough butt. Oh, look at him. It's a boy, right?
Girl.
Girl. Okay, look at
Yeah.
her. That's great. What's her name again?
Olive.
Olive. Okay.
Yeah.
Olive. That's close to the name of the receiver all the Saints fans, except for Calvin and I, want. From Ohio State. The guy Calvin and I want is Jamerson from Alabama, because I've only wanted an Alabama receiver for the past 5 years. Look at them. Look at the ones out there. You got some good ones.
I like Jameson, Olave, Dotson from Penn State, and going back to Ohio State, Garrett Wilson from Ohio State, David Bell from Purdue, and why can't I think of his name? Treylon Burks from Arkansas. Those are my top 6 guys.
That's who
pretty much
Calvin's
in
going
order
on.
right now.
But Calvin's been going on about Burks. Yeah, and there's been some talk about the Tennessee tight end as well. The Tennessee receiver as well. So,
hey, the last time we got a player from Tennessee, it didn't turn out too bad.
Listen to Calvin Burks over all them bums. All right. I'll take that. I'll take Jamerson, though. I really like him. If I'm going to take a receiver in the first round, I think he falls to 18, and I think you get a good one out of him. I think you get a really good one out of him. And, of course, I'd love to get Calvin Ridley from the Falcons, but that's beside the point.
Right.
Anyway, thank you guys for sticking with us. I just got a text from my wife. You need to lower your voice. I'm ready to go to bed. And I know Bob's the same way. Thank you guys for sticking with us tonight. We've got a whole off season to break down the draft, free agency. Free agency starts not next week, but the week after next, correct?
Yeah, March 16th. March 14th is the first day official negotiating can begin. Contracts become official March 16th.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So we'll have the free agency tags issued out first. And next Tuesday is Mardi Gras. I should be back for the show. I am flying from Nashville, but we'll play it by ear. See how everybody is, Mardi Gras night. So anyway, thank you guys for joining us, and we'll see you next time Under the Dome. Good night, everybody.
Night all.